It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Danny Wu. Hey, Danny, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, sir?
Doing fine, thank you. Thank you for coming on. I've been excited to talk to you for a couple of reasons. I've watched both of your films, actually. I watched American and Odyssey to 1947, which is the one you're promoting currently, right?
Yeah.
And then I watched Square One.
Wow.
Which,
that's impressive.
Yeah, which I actually found on YouTube. Did you know it's there?
Yeah. It's a long story with that one.
Okay. But, well, it looks like it's doing well. You had almost 1 million views on it. Mm-hmm. And interesting story. Can we talk about that one first, and then we'll go to American?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. It was interesting to me to see that for a couple of reasons. One, because I think it's the first really good video that portrayed Michael Jackson's the other side of the story, basically. Mm-hmm. Because I think the consensus amongst most people is that he was guilty, at least from the way I see it. Now, I always had questions about it. I wasn't convinced 100% that he was guilty of what he was accused of doing. I remember reading an article after Michael Jackson died and after Evan Chandler killed himself. And it was right around the same time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was within a couple of months.
I think it was within like 3-4 months of each event.
Right. And I saw an article, and I can't reference it because I don't remember where I saw it, but it was something that Jordan Chandler put out. And he said, I just want to clear the air because everyone's dead now, and I just want to get on with my life. And he said, the whole thing was bullshit. My father made it up just to, extort money from Michael Jackson. Nothing ever happened, blah, 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 blah. And I read that and I went, there would be no gain for him to do that and make it up, right? So I believed him. And I had the same thought as like once his story went down, all the other ones crumbled as well. And you said the exact same thing in your film. And I was like, finally, somebody said that, Well, I guess my first question was, I wanted to ask you, did you reach out to Jordan Chandler? Did you talk to him at all?
Well, this was, I think in 2019, the letter that you stated, I don't think it's ever been confirmed that it was actually written by him. I think it's very likely that it's not written by him.
Oh, okay.
At that point, I was just trying to make a YouTube video, about the other side of the Michael Jackson allegations. That was something that always fascinated me. I wanted just to focus on that 93 case. And, one thing led to another. I was able to get in contact with one of Jordan's acquaintances, Joe Spinzoni. And from there, we were able to, do an interview together. And I reached out to more people who were relative to the case. And, one by one, people started saying yes to being interviewed. And, we cranked that out in about 3 months. It was in my first journey into, I would say, documentary filmmaking.
Well, I like the way you did it. I like the style that, you did it very casually with the phone. And the girl, his acquaintance at, was it New York University or Columbia?
NYU. Yep.
NYU. Okay.
NYU.
Right.
She actually did go to Columbia after NYU, but when they were meeting, she was at NYU.
Okay, so you didn't actually talk to him, though, right?
No.
Okay. Did you reach out to him at all, or?
I don't think there's any way to reach out to him at this point. His identity is very hidden. I don't think he wants to talk about this case for reason to either side, and so. Because I think he has a gag order as well, right? So both sides have a gag order, so neither side is allowed to talk about the case. So that's why it kind of intrigued me to kind of look into it.
Yeah, I think if I were him, I would have had plastic surgery, changed my name, and moved to South America or someplace, and started over again.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. But it was important for me to, frame the story so that, people don't attack him, because I don't see him as, this liar or whatever. I see him as a victim as well of being just in this situation. So it was very important in the film to not portray him as the villain.
Well, I think that if the story is true, then he definitely was the victim. He was the victim of his father.
Yeah.
And, it's an interesting story about Evan Chandler, too, because Hollywood is a very small town. Even though you think of it as this sort of giant megaplex, it really is a little tight-knit community. Evan Chandler was a co-writer on the movie Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Isn't that incredible?
Well, one of the other writers on it, the main writer, was J.D. Shapiro, who's a friend of mine, who I know.
Wow.
But I had no idea that Evan was a co-writer on that. And it wasn't until your movie that I said, oh, my God, right? So
that's incredible.
So were you of the opinion before you made this film that Michael Jackson was really innocent of all of this?
I was a Michael Jackson fan growing up, and then I kind of didn't think about it, for a while. But I try to not be, either way, whatever I say, people are gonna get mad at me on Twitter for it. So I think going into it, I definitely, after hearing Josie's story and hearing Geraldine Hughes and all of that, I'm pretty firm in my opinion, but I think my film speaks for itself.
Well, okay, that's a good answer. You want to be a responsible journalist, right? And not actually paint a picture. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's very respectable, because a lot of people don't do that these days. They want to make just a point, and they don't care. Did you get a lot of pushback from people? I mean, a lot of reviews negatively?
The first film, I didn't, because it's not. I honestly, at that point, I didn't even know what a film festival was. Seriously, I just shot it and I put it up on YouTube. So I don't think most of the reviews we got were positive, and I think our one Rotten Tomato review was very positive as well. So I'm very grateful for that. I feel if we had a wide release, it might have been a little bit different. But because we were just a YouTube release and then it went on Prime Video, we kind of didn't go through the phase that a film would usually go through. So I think from that instance, I think I didn't get as much pushback. No, I don't think so. Because we were just so focused on the 1993 case, right?
Yeah. Like I said, once that one falls apart, all the other ones do too. And he was found not guilty.
He did go to court. That's the difference between,
yeah.
That's the difference between Michael Jackson and a lot of the other people that are being canceled today, right? You see, Michael Jackson's work is still everywhere. There's a biopic about Michael coming out, but that's because I think that was like the thing that he did right. He went to court and he beat the allegations.
Exactly.
If he didn't, I think it would be a completely different way that people look at Michael Jackson right now.
Well, and the other point you brought up in the film that was very good was that all of the cases were civil.
Yeah.
Like they never really had enough evidence to do a criminal trial.
Exactly.
And I think that speaks volumes as well. I mean, if you compare it to, the O.J. Simpson case, which you really can't compare it to because it's two completely different, where they had overwhelming criminal evidence,
Yeah.
And
I think there was a period where I actually haven't talked about this in a while, so my memory is not as sharp as I would like it to be. But I do recall there was a movement where people were trying to loop Michael Jackson in with the other cases. But in 2023 now, I don't think that's the case anymore. I think his reputation, obviously there will be that discourse always with people who believe he's guilty. You're never going to change some people's mind, just like how you'll never be able to change the other side of people's mind who will never look at any other evidence as well. But I feel that Michael Jackson, because of 2005 and because of all the overwhelming evidence that he has in his favor, it's really different than when you look at someone like a Bill Cosby or R. Kelly, O.J. Simpson, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think so too. The other point, and then we'll move on, that always kept in my head was that I saw an interview with Corey Feldman on Howard Stern.
Yeah.
And have you seen that one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have.
And Corey adamantly denies that anything ever happened with Michael and that he wasn't like that. And Howard grilled him for like a half an hour. Oh, come on, Corey, come on. Because Corey was in the midst of filing complaints or something about somebody else.
Yes.
And so, he wasn't afraid to call somebody out for it. Yeah. But he said, Michael, no. And
the thing is that we mentioned this in the film in the second cover, but in 1993, when the police went to Corey Feldman, they were grilling him about Michael Jackson. At one point in the interview, and this is documented, he started listing out his actual abusers in Hollywood at that time. They didn't care. Wow. They said, well, did Michael Jackson know about it? Did you tell that to Michael Jackson? That's all they were interested in.
Yeah, it's wow. Okay, we've opened up a can of worms here. We can go on forever. So let's move on with this. I want to ask you a little bit about you, and then we'll get to American. So it says you were born in China, and then you grew up in Vancouver.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay. Well, how old were you when you moved to Vancouver?
I was. It was 2004 summer, so I would have been 8 years old when I moved to Vancouver.
Oh, all right. And you moved with your family, presumably? You didn't go on your own.
No. My family moved with me in 2004, but when I got to high school, I moved to a boarding school, and then my family came back to China.
Why did you get interested in film, or how did you get interested in film?
I feel like this is like the first time someone mentioned this that I can tell like kind of the whole story because of what you just talked about. But really, it was because of the success of the Michael Jackson documentary. I really, at that point, I just wanted to make a YouTube video, and I realized that I wanted to make it into a longer film format. And then, I go on the Michael Jackson's family promoted the movie, the different fan communities. So I did a worldwide tour, kind of just promoting this film. And while I was promoting this, I was in China. That's when the pandemic happened, and we got locked down. And so I was in China with my family, and that's when I started watching a lot of the classic films, and that's how I really got into knowing that this is what I want to pursue. And because of that, I was like, I'm gonna study the greats. I'm gonna watch all the greatest films because I'm really behind. I didn't go to film school or anything like that. And one of the first movies that I watched was Citizen Kane. And that's kind of how we transitioned into American.
Oh, that's funny. Nothing like starting at the top and working your way down. Yeah. Yeah, because that was, hailed to be one of the greatest films ever made. I've watched it probably 8 times. And it's funny because I always notice something different every time I watch it. It's so complex. Not so much in the story. The story is like I know the story, but the way he shot it, his production, and I always notice things different. Like there was a couple of shots in the office where the cameraman actually had to be like under the floor because they were shooting up, and I just thought, wow.
That was a scene where he lost the election, and I remember there's a great photograph of Orson and Greg Toland. The floor is like cut out and the camera's in it, and the camera's inside the floor, and Orson and Greg Toland basically below ground level shooting that scene. That's how you get the beautiful ceiling shot and stuff like that. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, and stuff that had really never been done before. And he did shots like the other way around, from the ceiling straight down into the room.
Yeah, it's just the cinematic language of that film is just it's unparalleled.
So you got obsessed with Orson, and then you mixed in 2 other stories. But you know what? The way it was done was really good because they kind of seamlessly flowed together. You didn't feel like 3 separate stories, particularly.
No, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I wanted to tell it's funny. I actually wanted to make the Orson. I wanted to basically make a YouTube video on Orson Welles, like a 15-minute YouTube video, no joke, about Orson Welles and William Randolph Hearst. That was going to be it. But obviously, as I learned more about the story, I realized that there's a documentary film in here, and from there, I transitioned to I wanted to not just be solely about Orson Welles. You know, I like the idea of a few narratives being able to jump back and forth to keep the pacing up. And as an Asian American, I kind of felt like it was my responsibility to, you know, not whitewash some of the things that FDR has done, because obviously FDR is one of the greatest presidents, and we showcase that in the film, why he's considered that. But there's also some other aspect of his presidency that I wanted to bring to light as well. And so I always knew that I wanted to have a Japanese American story of the internment camp in there. And when I found the story of Howard Kakita, you know, as you mentioned about the timeline flowing, he was born in 1938, right? That's when War of the Worlds happened. He moves to Japan in 1940, and that's when Citizen Kane was being produced. And as his parents enter the internment camps, that's when Orson's in Brazil working on It's All True. And then at the end of the movie, he comes back to the U.S., and Orson leaves the U.S. in 1947. So it's kind of like this crisscross at the end. So basically for me, the entire movie, I just want to, you know, have their two timelines build up to one moment where one American leaves the States and another American comes back to the States.
You know, the effect I like that you used in the film, too, is where you take the still photographs and make them sort of appear to come alive. That's a cool trick. And I'm sure that's something in Adobe, right?
Yeah, we have a very talented. We had a very talented VFX team. My friend Yifu Kang, you know, he's responsible for all the 3D modeling in our film. He's a landscaper, so he was able to bring over technology from the landscape community, where he can remodel 3D buildings, so that we were basically able to create Howard Kakita's courtyard before the bombing, basically 1-to-1.
Yeah, it was amazing. And that was just a still photograph, or you just completely remodeled that, or you modeled that?
You mean for the courtyard?
Yeah.
The scene where he's like climbing up the roof and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, so Howard, he has a, you know, for someone that suffered tragedy like that, you know, you kind of remember certain events, and he definitely remembered the layout of how his courtyard was set up. So he was able to draw a floor plan for us of what it looked like.
Oh.
And it was very, very precise. And he had around 10 or 12 surviving photographs, just like scattered around, of family portraits, you know, photos of him playing at the water pump and stuff like that. And so we were able to take that and basically place, you know, we can see the edge of a house, for example, in a photograph. We're like, okay, that's probably where it would go here in the floor plan. Okay, so this tree, this Kakita tree is here in the photo, and that's where he remembered it in his floor map. We're going to place it right here. So he was able to basically create this 3D world, and then I can come in with a virtual camera and basically walk around and just shoot wherever I want to. That's
incredible. That's great. Because it really added to the film. You know, it really made the images sort of come alive.
Yeah, we wanted to. So we knew that with this film, along with the talking heads, you know, one of the things that with my first film, Square One, that because of inexperience, because of there being no budget, a lot of the cover angles that we would shoot were basically just stock footage videos, right?
Yeah.
But for this, I wanted to immerse the audience completely into the film, so I knew that we would have archival footage, of course, and we would have 3D modeling and animation. And the last one is the photographs that, you know, kind of have a little bit of movement to keep you engaged. Not all of them have, obviously there's going to be photos that aren't appropriate to have movements. You know, we have to choose wisely for those. So I think that was the three formats of media that we wanted to focus on for when it's not on the talking heads.
Well, there was a very crude version of that, probably just to limited technology. But if you want to go back into history, get the video of the Beatles doing Eleanor Rigby. And they used still photographs and they kind of moved them. But the problem is they look like bobbleheads.
That's a problem for sure that you run into.
Yeah.
If it's just through photographs, because there's no depth perception, right? So that it can look a little bit awkward, similar to Michael Jackson's "Leave Me Alone," right? It's kind of the same idea. I've seen the video before from Yellow Submarine, but I think we're talking about the same video.
Basically, yeah.
Very similar to Michael Jackson's "Leave Me Alone" music video as well.
if that's the effect, it's sort of cool, you know?
Yeah.
But if you're trying to do that sort of seriously, then it just looks a little silly.
I think there was a moment where in the beginning, before we wanted to experiment, before we were experimenting with the 3D modeling, we were just going to do it all with illustrations and then move the camera through the illustrations. But then we just realized, for example, there's a scene in the film where the camera is moving through the Greyhound bus that Isaac Woodard is on, and it starts in the front and then the camera dollies to the back of the bus. We tried that first with just illustrations of seats, you know, drawn out illustrations of every individual seats, put a camera in the middle and then move down. But you completely just lose depth perception, and it doesn't look right. And so that's one of the reasons that we knew that we had to go into 3D modeling, because we wanted to pay respect to the events.
So the movie is called American, an Odyssey to 1947. The film comes out when?
It came out in London. In London, it was out on August 25th. It did really, really well in its first week. We just got a notification that they want to extend it for a second week.
Wow, great! That's great.
So that's at the Bertha Dock House. In the States, it's going to come out September 8th theatrically in New York. You can catch it at Cinema Village. The 6 p.m. screening I will be at. We're going to be doing a Q&A after that. And it will be coming out on VOD on, you know, iTunes, Amazon Prime, stuff like that. You know, your cable providers. That's going to come out on September 12th.
Super. Well, I'm very happy it's doing well. It's a great film. I encourage everyone to see it. Danny, do you have a website you want to give out?
The website for the film is American1947.com. So it's American and the digits 1947.com.
Okay, great. You working on anything else?
Not at this moment. I'm just kind of focused on trying to make sure American gets the eyeballs it deserves. So I'll be focusing on that, and then, you know, when the next obsession comes around, I'm sure I'll have a better idea of what it'll be.
Are you going to stick with documentary type films, or do you want to branch out and do features?
That's a really deep question.
Wasn't meant to be.
You know, I don't think I ever went into documentary filmmaking being with the mindset of I'm a documentary filmmaker. It was just like, you know, the format that called out for me at the time. I think I would definitely be interested in making narrative films in the future. But, you know, I don't ever want to, you know, set out a specific thing and not do it. But I'm very happy with where we are right now. But that's definitely something that I want to look at in the future. Okay,
well, just maybe as a what if, you know, if money was no object, what film would you want to make?
Oh, that is you ask great questions. Okay, if money wasn't, I think, you know what, I think I'm really, is this documentary filmmaking, or are we talking
any film? Any film? Yeah.
Oh,
is it too big? Too big of a question? Yeah.
That's that's too big of a question. Maybe I'll give I do have some ideas for narrative films, but for a documentary film, I think in the future that's on my bucket list. I definitely want to do something that's I grew up loving basketball. I would love to do a documentary that's related to, you know, the NBA, the history of it, or, you know, something that's in that area.
Okay. Now, I didn't mean to stump you with, like, you know, is there a God type question.
No, these are great questions.
Well, listen, let's wind this down. And would you like to come back on the show? Because I'd love to talk to you again, like after.
I would always love to talk to you. This is a great conversation.
Okay. Let's just sort of pencil in maybe after this gets released, and maybe in a couple of months, and we'll see how it's doing, and we'll have you back on, okay? I'd love to have you back.
What do they call it? Friend of the show? I'm friend of the Douglas Coleman Show.
Oh, well, you're already a friend. Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
All right, Danny.
Thank you so much for having me on.